to save the Apache twins from a forced match. The poor rancher offered his name. Nobody in the dusty rim of Arizona territory ever forgot the moment when Caleb Hensley rode into the dead silent canyon, his horse trembling beneath him as if it sensed the danger before he did. The sunset bled across the sky like a fresh wound, and the wind carried a whisper that felt like a warning. Caleb had heard rumors for days, whispers that the Mescalero twins, two young Apache girls of barely 16, were to be traded off by a ruthless band leader named Casca, who demanded their obedience and planned to force them into marriage to seal an alliance. People said no white man would dare interfere. People said it would start a war. But Caleb wasn't thinking about consequences. He was thinking about the look he had seen in their mother's eyes earlier that morning. Eyes full of terror, desperation, and a hope so fragile he feared touching it might break her. Caleb had ridden out from his ranch, though calling it a ranch was generous. It was 4 broken fence posts, a barn leaned sideways by wind, and a cabin held together by stubbornness. He had nothing but a good heart, a worn rifle, and a name barely worth the dirt it stood on. But the twins' mother, Ahalani, had begged him with a shaking voice. She had said Casca would take her daughters at sundown. She had said anyone who tried to stop it would die, and Caleb, for reasons he couldn't fully explain, had looked at her and promised, "I'll bring them back alive. That's my word." He didn't know then how heavy those words would become. He slowed his horse as he neared the canyon, the air tightening around him like a noose. The sound of drums echoed off the rock walls, slow, steady, ceremonial. He slipped off his saddle, leading his horse forward on foot so the crunch of hooves wouldn't give him away. As he came around a bend, he saw torchlight flickering in a rough circle and shadows moving like predators. Then he saw the twins, Nahele and Tallulah, kneeling in front of the gathered band, their hands tied, their faces pale but defiant. They were trying to be brave, but Caleb could see the terror flickering in their eyes each time Casca glanced their way. Casca stood tall and broad-shouldered, with a cruel grin carved deep into his face. His voice boomed through the canyon as he announced the beginning of the binding ritual. Caleb's stomach turned. He knew if he rushed in guns blazing, he'd be dead before he reached them. These men had grown up in war, hunger, and blood. He had grown up plowing dry earth. But the moment Nahele met his eyes, just for an instant, a flicker of recognition, of desperate hope, Caleb felt something inside him clamp tight. There was no turning back. He stepped out into the open, heart pounding like a thunderstorm. Silence cut the air. Drums stopped mid-beat. 50 pairs of eyes turned on him. Casca snarled, "White man, you lost?" Caleb forced a shaky smile. "No, I'm exactly where I need to be." Casca walked toward him like a wolf circling prey. "You interrupt sacred ceremony. You insult our ways. You insult me. Give one reason not to cut your throat." Caleb swallowed hard. "I didn't come to fight," he said. "I came to offer something." Casca laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Offer? You have nothing we want." Caleb hesitated, then said the words that later made him famous and nearly got him killed. "I offer my name. I offer myself as protector. Release the girls to me under my care." "Under my name!" The canyon erupted in disbelief. The band members shouted, some mocking, some furious, some confused. Caleb stood still. His legs shook, but he didn't let them see. Casca's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Your name is Dust," he growled. "Your ranch is dying. What can you offer these girls but hunger?" Caleb's voice cracked but held. "Freedom, safety, a life without fear. You can't give them that, not by force." The silence that followed was suffocating. Casca stepped closer until they were nearly nose to nose. "Why risk your life for 2 girls who are not yours?" Caleb didn't answer at first. He dropped his gaze to the ground because the truth felt too raw to admit out loud. Finally, he whispered, "Because someone should." Casca stared at him for a long, tense moment. Then he burst into laughter, dark, mocking laughter that echoed across the canyon. "You're insane." "But perhaps." He stroked his chin thoughtfully. "Perhaps your life could be amusing to gamble with." He raised his hand, signaling his men. 2 warriors stepped forward and shoved Caleb onto his knees beside the twins. Dust filled his mouth. Nahele whispered, "Don't, they will kill you." Tallulah's voice trembled. "They're going to torture you first." Caleb whispered back, "I'm not leaving you." Casca strutted in front of the gathering, addressing them like a ringmaster. "This white man offers his name in exchange for the girls. But names are worthless. Blood is proof, so let us test him. Casca pointed toward the far end of the canyon, where a jagged cliff rose like a shark's tooth. He climbs, Casca declared. Bare hands. If he reaches the top before the moon clears the clouds, the girls go free. If he falls, his grin widened. They stay, and he feeds the vultures. Caleb's stomach twisted. The cliff looked nearly impossible. Loose shale clung to it like glittering knives. The moon was already rising, half covered by thin drifting clouds. It was suicide. But the twins' eyes were on him, full of fear and a flicker of hope he couldn't betray. I'll climb, Caleb said. Casca cut his bindings and shoved him forward. The entire band followed, forming a semicircle around the cliff's base. Caleb approached it and pressed his hand to the cold stone. His palms were already sweating. He looked back at the twins. They knelt side by side, their faces pale, their breaths trembling. Their mother's face flashed in his mind, her tears, her pleading. He put one foot on a ledge and began. The first few feet weren't terrible, but soon the rock crumbled under his fingertips. Twice he slipped and scraped his arms raw. His shirt tore. His nails split. Blood smeared the stone. The warriors below muttered, placing bets on which moment he'd fall. Caleb ignored them. He reached for a crack higher up, missed it, and nearly plunged backward. Gasps rippled through the crowd. He clung by 2 fingers to a tiny edge that felt like it might break at any moment. He forced his foot higher, pushed up, gasped for breath. Halfway up, his strength began to drain. His arms burned like they were full of molten iron. His vision blurred. The moonlight shifted as the clouds thinned. Time was running out. He pressed his forehead against the rock and whispered, "Not yet. Please, not yet." He remembered being a boy making promises he couldn't keep. He remembered his father telling him, "A man's worth is measured by the lives he helps, not the land he holds." And he remembered the fear in the twins' eyes. That memory alone kept him moving. He reached the final 20 feet. The ledges grew smaller, sharper. A wrong move would send him spinning into the darkness. His breath came out in ragged gasps. His muscles trembled uncontrollably, but he dug his fingers into a crack and pulled with everything he had left. He felt something tear in his shoulder. Pain exploded through his body. He screamed, but he didn't let go. Inch by inch, he hauled himself upward until his hand finally grasped the top edge. With a desperate final lunge, he rolled over onto solid ground just as the moon fully broke through the clouds. A cry rose from the canyon floor, half shock, half disbelief. Caleb lay flat on his back, chest heaving, staring at the moonlit sky. He had done it. He didn't know how, but he had done it. After several moments, he crawled to the edge and looked down. The twins were staring up, tears shining in their eyes. Casca stood frozen, unable to decide whether to be impressed or angry. Caleb descended slowly down a side slope where the climb was gentler. The warriors parted as he limped forward, bloodied, exhausted, but standing. Casca approached him like a storm cloud. "You should be dead," he growled. Caleb wiped the blood from his mouth. "Maybe, but I'm not. We had a deal." Casca's jaw clenched. The tension was unbearable. Then with a furious sweep of his arm, he barked, "Untie them!" The twins were freed. Nahil nearly collapsed, but Caleb caught her. Tallulah clung to his other arm. Tears streamed down both their faces. Casca spat into the dirt. "Take them. But know this, if you ever set foot near my land again, there will be blood, yours." Caleb nodded silently. He didn't trust his voice. He led the twins away from the torchlight, away from the eyes filled with grudges and disbelief. They walked into the dark desert, the canyon shrinking behind them. Hours passed before they reached Caleb's small ranch. When Ahalani saw her daughters alive, she fell to her knees, sobbing. She grabbed Caleb's hands, kissed them, thanked him in a trembling voice. The twins hugged him tightly as if afraid he might vanish. Caleb stood there, dazed, aching, uncertain how to respond. He had expected relief. Instead, he felt something heavier, like a bond had been forged in fire. The next morning, rumors spread across the territory that a poor rancher had challenged an Apache, war leader, and survived. Some called him a fool. Some called him brave. Some called him cursed for interfering. But all agreed on one thing. No one else would have risked that climb. Caleb expected the twins to return to their people once the danger passed. But Ahalani came to him quietly one evening as the sun dipped below the hills. "They are safe here," she said softly. "Casca will not stop. He has pride like iron. If they go back, he will take them. You offered your name. Do you regret it? Caleb looked at the twins standing nearby, their faces still haunted but slowly healing. He shook his head. No, I don't regret it. The days that followed were filled with unexpected warmth. The girls helped around the ranch, laughing together as they cleaned, cooked, and tended the animals. They teased Caleb for being too serious. They placed herbs on his shoulder when the pain flared. They trusted him, and he found himself wanting to protect them with a fierceness he didn't know he had. But danger still lingered. One night, under the pale glow of the moon, Tallulah asked him in a trembling voice, "Will Casca come for us?" Caleb didn't lie. "Maybe, but if he does, he'll have to go through me first." Nahali placed her hand gently on his. "You already risked your life once. Why keep doing it?" Caleb met her eyes. "Because your lives matter. Because freedom matters. And because your mother trusted me when no one else would." What none of them expected was the slow-growing bond between Caleb and Ahalani. She watched him work, struggle, heal, and protect. She saw his quiet strength and the gentleness he tried to hide. One evening, as the sky blushed with fading sunlight, she approached him with a softness that made his pulse jump. "You saved my daughters," she whispered. "And you saved me from a fear that was drowning me. You gave us safety when you had nothing." Caleb swallowed hard. "I just did what was right." Ahalani stepped closer. "Sometimes what is right is also what is rare." She touched his cheek gently, and something inside Caleb shifted like earth after rain. As weeks turned into months, she fell in love with the man, who had offered nothing but his name, and yet had given them everything. Casca never returned. Maybe he feared the spirit that guided Caleb's impossible climb. Maybe he feared the unity that had formed between them. Or maybe he simply realized he had been defeated by something stronger than violence, courage fueled by compassion. The territory eventually forgot the dramatic details, but the people closest to it never did. They remembered the night a poor rancher stared death in the face for two girls who weren't his. They remembered the cliff climb that should have killed him but didn't, and they remembered the promise he had spoken with trembling courage. "I'll bring them back alive." In the end, Caleb's ranch grew into a home filled with laughter. Ahalani stood beside him. The twins thrived, free and fearless. And the name he once thought worthless became a symbol of bravery, sacrifice, and love strong enough to challenge an empire of fear. Years later, when travelers passed through Arizona territory and asked about the old story, people would point toward the distant canyon cliffs and whisper, "That's where a man chose courage over his own life. That's where fate changed." And somewhere beneath that vast sky, the land itself seemed to remember the moment when a poor rancher offered his name, and won far more than he ever expected.